Okay, this is a little vid on a actual new human subspecies that has been found, showing that they don't connect to any of the other subspecies here. And seeing as how recently I did one on the Negritos and Pygmy populations of the islands through the Philippines and these areas, and this directly connects to it, I thought I would share it with you here. I'm sorry it's on National Geographic website, and I can't minimize it down and just read the stuff on the left hand side here. Every time I attempt to do it, it resets itself over and over again, not allowing me to. But I'll try to get through this as quick as possible. Researchers digging in the Philippines' Callao Cave found teeth and bones that they say belong to a distinct species of ancient human, which they have named Homo Luzonensis, after Luzon, which is the major island of the Manilan Philippines, and it's kind of in the top northern type area of it there. A new species of ancient human discovered in the Philippines. Dubbed Homo Luzonensis, the species is one of the most important finds that will be out in the coming years, one scientist predicts. Humankind tangled shrub of ancestry now has a new branch. Researchers in the Philippines announced today that they have discovered a new species of ancient human previously unknown to science. The small-bodied hominin, named Homo luzonensis, lived in the island of Luzon at least 50,000 to 67,000 years ago. Now, we know about the hominid that they had found called the Hobbit here recently, and this is even another differential here. This is not that. The hominin, identified from a total of 7 teeth and 6 small bones, hosts a patchwork of ancient and more advanced features in itself. The landmark discovery announced in Nature on Wednesday makes Luzon the third Southeast Asian island in the last 15 years to bear signs of unexpected ancient human activity. Now, I've gone into in the one that I did on the Negritos about how there have to have been boats because the Philippines never actually connect, even during the lowest glacial maximum and stuff, to where it doesn't make an ice bridge in any way, shape, or form. Neither does Australia and a few other places. So they don't want to give credit to the fact that these ancient people had some type of boating going on, but at the same time, there's no way they could have made it to that planet. You can't take it all the way back to Pangea and then say, well, they separately formed out of like that. Although there are some thoughts and conjecture that lead to some of these ideas, it really is seen as being an untrue thought because the people there show up just bam. They don't. It's as a starting point. It doesn't just go back and fade like you would think it would if they had been there forever and ever. Anyhow, for a long time, the Philippine Islands have been more or less left out, says the study co-author of the project leader, Armand Mayares, an ancient or an archaeologist at the University of Philippines, Diliman, and a National Geographic grantee. But H. Luzonensis flips the script and continues to challenge the outdated idea that that the human line neatly progressed from less advanced to more advanced species. Indeed, that I believe they don't have any connections to this, to any of the current people on Earth, genetic-wise perhaps. This is probably one of many they've found of threads that die out and don't actually continue on. But if you look at it, it really looks extremely chimp-like. This is a hominid and not a human. The story of human evolution began about 7 million years ago when the lineages that lead to Homo sapiens and chimpanzees had somewhat separated. This is the evolutionary model. And this new discovery made me thrilled. Yasuke Kaifu, a paleoanthropologist at Tokyo's National Museum of Nature and Science, who was not part of the study, says in an email, it further highlights remarkable diversity of archaic primitive hominins once found present in Asia and in a way beyond his expectations. Aida Gomez Robles, a paleoanthropologist at University College of London who reviewed the study before publication, is hesitant to equivocally say the find represents a new species yet, but she adds that all possibilities to explain the unusual fossils are equally intriguing. It is absolutely one of the most important findings that will be out in a number of years, she says. Digging deeper into Asia's parts, decades ago, the story of Asia seemed to be more straightforward, if incomplete. Paleoanthropologists knew that archaic hominids, such as Homo erectus, ventured over land bridges into parts of what now Indonesia nearly a million years ago, but far east farther east, it was thought that these hominids ran into ocean currents considered impassable without boats. Indeed, no one swam all the way to the Philippines, and so how do people get there? You can have them floating on flotsam and jetsam, if you will, or you can have them make it on something, no matter how archaic you look at it, as being some type of boat or boating device. This is Manila, and you find Callao Cave way up here up north. Now, Luzon seems specifically difficult for ancient hominins to reach, as it had never been connected to the mainland by land bridges, as I said, so archaeologists thought that digging into deeper, older layers of soil wouldn't yield anything much. But when Mahares first excavated Callao Cave in 2003, he found 25,000-year-old evidence of human activity, but he didn't dig any deeper than about 4 foot down. Now, most Southeast Asian archaeologists would only excavate sites up to 2 meters or so, 6 foot, and they'd stop, Mahares says. And this is the way they also do it in America, where for a long time they stopped and said, well, there's Clovis, and so they just stopped. But now they've dug in farther down than there and have found definitely there are pre-Clovis people, and so that Clovis first idea has been shattered. Now they've actually found Caucasians and not the Eskimo Inuit type people that came down and made the Amerindians before any Amerindians into America that we think of, and it was done by Caucasians. This has been found up in Alaska, and the genetics has proven it. I've done a video on it here recently, but then again, that wasn't a first. That was one of many, and it came from way, way before that. There is sign of human interaction in the United States well over 130,000 years, and people won't give credit to it. The Callao Cave in Southern California shows it somewhere around 200,000 BC. Chipped stone tools and things, burning, fire, things like this. It's quite amazing, but archaeologists want to deny that. They have this whole idea that America was just, no, that maybe quite different. People need to let go of some of their ancient thoughts and see if we can't figure out the reality of things rather than trying to force everything into a mold you created a long time ago before you knew half of what we know now. The team excavated more than 5 foot deep of clay below where they had stopped digging in 2003 with no fossils in sight, but then they found a layer of breccia, a type of rock formed in a jumble of other materials. Tantalizingly, this layer contained fragments of bone that had washed into the cave long ago. At first, the bones seemingly to include only animals such as deers and pigs, but under close inspection, one piece stood out, a nearly complete foot bone that looked human. The team sent the fossil to Philip Piper, co-author of a new study who is looking through the animal remains. He called me up and said, "Hello, mate. We've got human remains here," Mahares said, and I said, "Really? Then we have to go grab a beer." In 2010, Mahares and his colleagues unveiled the 67,000-year-old fossil, which they tentatively suggested belonged to a small-bodied number of Homo sapiens, making it perhaps the oldest sign of our species anywhere in the Philippines at that time. But Mahares suspected that it might actually belong to a new species, maybe even a Luzon analog similar to H. florensis, and that's your Hobbit creature. The team needed more fossils to be sure, though, and then here we see some timelines here, if we'll look at this, where they can show that Australopithecines and all of the leaders are way back in here. Homo starts around right in here, and then it breaks into many subclads in here. We see Florensis, Denisovans, Neanderthals, Heidelbergensis, and Homo sapiens listed here. Homo sapiens, by the way, this needs to be changed now. It actually reaches back before the Denisovans and Neanderthals. It's not an overlapping this way. This actually comes to here. Now we know that they found Jebel Irhoud, Homo sapiens at 315,000 years BC. So we're probably a little bit farther, closer to about where I'm pointing now, and a lot similar to where Denisovans and the Neanderthals seem to come out at. The bone found in the cave in the Philippines 2007 appeared to belong to our genus Homo. Additional specimens, including more toe bones, teeth, finger bones, and femur shaft, point to a new species and that they aren't even a Homo type of hominid. Something old, something new, they say. As luck would have it, the excavations uncovered 2 more toe bones, along with 7 teeth, 2 finger bones, and part of a femur on return trips to Callao Cave in 2011 and in 2015. In all, the remains represent at least 3 separate individuals. The small fossil's curves and grooves reveal an unexpected mix of both ancient and more advanced traits. The teeth's small sizes and relatively simple shapes, for instance, point to a more modern individual, but one upper premolar has 3 roots, a trait that's found in fewer than 3% of modern humans, and one foot bone resembles those of ancient Australopithecines, a group that includes the famous human relative Lucy, who trekked across Africa through roughly 3 million years ago. Now, 5 of the 7 teeth are attributed to Homo Luzonensis, and the teeth have small sizes, relatively simple shapes, and you can see them here. I'm believing this one may have the prong on the back of it and has a 3-pronged effect, or is this the premolar that has 1, 2, and 1 in the back? So here's a looking at this foot bone attributed to Homo Luzonensis, and small, 2 centimeters, unusually curved, a trait more seen in more ancient cousins of modern humans such as Australopithecines. This is not the bones that we have today, and so it shows it quite archaic. So there's a little bit of an odd mix in this creature. I agree with the authors that the combination of features is like nothing we've seen before, says Maria Martinon Torres, the director of Spain's National Research Center on Human Evolution. New York University anthropologist Shara Bailey, an expert on ancient teeth, notes that South Africa's Homo Naledi, discovered by a team including National Geographic guarantee Lee Berger, also has features that look both ancient and modern in a mix. She takes the 2 discoveries as a sign that mosaic evolution was more common among hominids than once thought. Now, Martina and Torres further suggests that the mix of dental features that somewhat resembles that seen in 15,000-year-old hominin remains from Deshan, southern China, which she and her colleagues recently described along with H. luzonensis. The discoveries join recent finds hinting that by 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, as the Pleistocene epoch drew to a close, hominids in Asia had a startling amount of diversity. Over there, this also contests the idea of an out-of-Africa theory, and along with that concept, there are ancient hominids seen in the African DNA, but it's known as a ghost hominid. It actually takes up a much larger percentage than even the Neanderthals do for the Caucasians in their genetic type, but it still looked as a ghost hominid because they can't find the genetic signature it comes from. It comes from one of these archaic creatures they can't quite get the full genome out of at this point. So what's in a name? Well, many scientists applaud the research for its thoroughness. Defining a species from just 13 small bones and teeth is tricky. Although the scientists attempted to extract DNA, they were unsuccessful, as is common for samples that have stewed for millennia in the heat and humidity of tropical locales. And here we see some of the digs that are going on through this cave, and you can see the size of this thing. It's huge, and of course the origin picture I showed you shows it coming down through that area. So quite a extensive cave. This isn't some little size of a room type of thing. Small stature of H. luzonensis could also cause some traits of the bones to appear more primitive than they truly are, says John Hawks. He's a paleoanthropologist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison who's not involved in the study, although this muddles comparisons of the species to other known hominins. Where there are compelling features, he thinks the case for a new species is reasonable. His overall take is, I really wish there were more bones. And indeed, it's like you can find closely related, like, say, lemurs. And somebody can tell the slight variations on these lemurs by their bones, not the physical lemur in front of them. And we're using that type of concepts to say, this is a little different here. And through that research, you can figure out that whether it is a fluke, some type of mutation, an illegal cross that's gone on, or perhaps a totally different species. This appears to be an odd cross that makes a different species. The discovery team has done a very meticulous and commendable job describing these new fossils,
and their naming of a new species, in my opinion, is valid. Griffith University archaeologist Adam Brum, an expert on Florensis, who wasn't involved in the study, says in an email, "This is truly sensational finding." So he agrees, hey, you found one like me and it's different. It's amazing. Lead study author Florent Detroit, a lecturer in France's National Museum of Natural History, adds that species are human-made categories that aim to clarify evolutionary history, not necessarily hard and fast biological realities. But if in the future colleagues are able to show that we were wrong because the fossils can enter into one of the already known hominid species, we'll just lump that in and forget about it. But in the meantime, I'm convinced that this is the way we had to do it, he says via emails. Tools of the trade. However the new hominin is ultimately defined, researchers are excited by hints that our ancient relatives in the Philippines were engaging in some very familiar activities, including signs of tool use. The 2010 paper introduced the Callao Cave foot bone, which is now considered part of H. Luzonensis, mentions that a deeper bone found in the same sediments bears what looks like stone tool cut marks. Michael Petraglia, a paleoanthropologist at Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History, takes the bone as a sign that H. Luzonensis was a proficient tool maker and hunter. Though his proficiency is not really shown, they don't have enough tools to show you how well he had done. There's also evidence that H. Luzonensis, or another ancient hominid, lived on Luzon even further back in time. In 2018, Majares and his colleagues announced the discovery of stone tools and a butchered rhinoceros skeleton that are more than 700,000 years old, found not too far from Callao Cave. Because of the time gap between the remains and the tool site, however, it's tough to say whether the stone tools were predecessors of H. Luzonensis or an unrelated hominin, so they can't connect the two necessarily, but here's something. There's a raft of possibilities. While evolution sculpted H. Luzonensis into a small form similar to that of H. Florensis, or the Hobbit man, we do not know which island conditions drove the differences between the two species. Also, while a barrage of studies makes it clear that interspecies unions happen regularly, we don't know whether H. Luzonensis ancestors interacted or bred with other hominid species that lived in Asia at the time, such as the enigmatic Denisovans. And if they were able to get the genetic information out of this, it would easily pinpoint a few things, even if it was partial, but they really haven't gotten anything at this point. You could see this as a kind of natural experiment in human evolution, says Gerard van der Berg of the University of Wollongong, an expert on Florensis also. Another major unknown is how the ancestors of H. Luzonensis even reached in the Philippines. In 2016, researchers unveiled stone tools on the Indonesian island of Sulawesi that date between 118,000 and 194,000 years old, or at least 60,000 years older than the island's oldest known modern humans. Taken alongside the remains from Flores and Luzon, the site suggests that ancient hominin dispersal throughout that region wasn't necessarily as rare as accidental as researchers had once thought. If rhinos can swim and get to places, certainly we can think of Erectus florensis and Luzonensis, not necessarily just swimming, but at least rafting, if not boating, Petraglia says, indicating here, but he'll get berated for saying that people had boats that long ago. I guarantee it. People are going to try to make fun of him for trying to say it, but how else would you get him there? It's just pure speculation, but you could posit at that and make some convincing arguments, and indeed I've done a little of that, but I'll stop. One thing remains clear: Southwest Asia probably has a home to more hominin species than current fossils let on. For his part, Majares is continuing to look for other signs of H. Luzonensis, including a current search at Luzon's Biak Nabato National Park, done with support from the National Geographic Society. Through it all, Majares sees the future for H. Luzonensis and for Asian anthropology as bright. I'm very proud because as a Filipino and Southeast Asian, we tend to be on the periphery of this debate. Now we can be actively engaged in the debate because our areas, our sites are now recognized, Majares says, and that is, I guess, my legacy in this world. So, amazingly, there isn't an untouched place, almost,
And people say, oh, there isn't much showing of this, there isn't much showing of that. Well, here's some showing of that. Again, here we are on the top of the Philippines, and I'm going to show you that original cave. This is a predisposed idea of what the guy would have looked like. I would zoom in on it, but it will reset, I'm positive. And this is the way the cave entrance looked there. And you can see it leads out through here. There's almost a skylight effect going through here, and it goes deeper and deeper back where we are. We're inside looking out. And you can see they've kind of made a step for them to go around here so they can walk through. But yeah, interesting find, guys. And so like, share, and subscribe. And we'll get on to deeper things in ancient archaic history. Peace.